My online course that I've done in the past is LIS 751, Database Design and Management. So it is a full semester class, 3 credits, where students learn both how to design relational databases using SQL software, and also how to be kind of a super query person, so do elaborate multi-table queries and subqueries within the relational database environment. The class it is fully online, and it is asynchronous, but only within the context of a week. So every week, things must be completed within the context of the week, but when students complete it within the context of the week is up to them. So it's flexible within a 7-day period, but things must be completed by the week due date. So that kind of keeps everyone on schedule and gets the benefits of the asynchronous, but yet keeps everything a little more under control, so you can check student progress going along. And the tools I use predominantly are PowerPoint with audio that we then convert to a web accessible format, because the PowerPoint with audio slides are too big on their own, so they have to be compressed. And then I do a little bit of recording with Jing as well, which is a free kind of screen capture software that will give you nice, I think, 7-minute snips of video. And then I upload those into the Learn UW space. And then to kind of keep things moving along on a weekly basis, I've developed a workbook, and so the students apply and demonstrate what they've learned from the textbook by completing the workbook exercises, and that's kind of what they turn in every week. And then in addition to that, there's a major project they complete over the course of the semester, designing a database, and there are 3 quizzes across the course of the semester. The class does not have a graded discussion component. However, I do set up weekly discussion modules that are there more for support and for students to get help from each other about design problems they're experiencing or software problems they're experiencing, or for me to broadcast tips or issues that have come up so that everyone can see them. The main thing that motivated me to teach the online course was my department's decision to create a revenue-generating, fully online master's degree program. So prior to that departmental decision, I had done some kind of hybrid work with face-to-face courses, but putting some materials online. But this was the real motivation to put it all online, because we wanted to attract students from all over the country. So when my department decided it wanted to develop this online program, I was initially quite skeptical, both from a kind of student teaching quality perspective. Would teaching online really be as good quality as teaching face-to-face? And also I was quite skeptical about the increased workload on me. How hard would teaching online be? Had heard it was very, very difficult, and so I was greatly concerned about that. I have to say I became a convert to a certain extent, despite my initial skepticism. That's not to say that teaching online is easy, and what I had been told by people who were more experienced than me from College of Engineering was that it takes 3 times teaching a class before there's a time savings. And I think I would agree with that general rule of thumb, that it took 3 times, but by the 3rd time, in terms of my workload savings, I would agree that that's how long it takes, but you get there, and then you do kind of enjoy these efficiencies. And then along the way, I learned that I could do so much more, and I could do different things online than I could do face-to-face, and that it promoted really different sorts of student learning than I think normally occur in the classroom. And so between realizing the benefits in terms of my own time management and seeing the way that it does in fact allow for different sorts and in many cases improved student learning, I became a convert. And so I'm actually quite interested in it now. I don't know that I would want to teach every course online, but I certainly enjoy having some of my courses online. In terms of the revenue inducements, it's not important to know the numbers, the budget numbers. What's important to realize is that money that comes in from non-traditional students. So non-traditional students includes students who would not normally come to the Madison campus. So usually it's I think they've set like a 60-mile boundary. So any student who's outside that 60-mile boundary who's taking a class online, the revenue, the tuition from that goes into a magic pot of money. And again, the numbers may change, but the pot is magic in the sense that that money has different rules associated with it than your standard budget money. And so essentially a chunk of that magic pot money comes back to the department. And I would say there's two important direct benefits that I've personally experienced. One is that because of that money, my department is able to offer me a month summer salary anytime I create a new online course or I make significant changes or updates to an online course. So if you're teaching, an online course regularly, you can count on maybe every 2 or 3 summers that you can get an extra month's summer salary. So that's actually quite nice as an additional source of, salary. It doesn't adjust your base, of course, but it's a month of summer salary. In addition, I would say having that extra money has really aided my department in facing the overall campus budget cuts, in the sense that it's given us certain flexibilities and it's definitely cushioned the blow of the campus budget cuts. And that is something my department really, really values now, because we've seen what the alternatives might be. I think the most interesting thing I've seen in terms of student learning is students taking advantage of my ability to customize the course for them. So, and I was able to do this, I would say, starting on maybe my 3rd or 4th time through, after I'd kind of gotten a handle on everything. After the 3rd or 4th time through, I realized that certain students needed more help. And so I would basically build these kind of remedial or tutorial modules for them and offer them up as optional. Like, if you need more help, see this. If you want, say, the workbook is particularly difficult, we'll have a practice workbook that has the answers right in the workbook, so the students can, do the problem and see the answer right there. And by offering that being able to offer that kind of extra remedial help, I'm able to kind of bring up the bottom of the class to a higher level. But yet, students who are more advanced, who are moving through the material more swiftly, because it's optional, they can just skip over it and kind of keep the pace that they want to keep. At the same time, I've also developed kind of advanced optional modules. So they're advanced materials that perhaps I tried once, but the majority of students didn't get it, and it seemed to stress people out too much. And so, but I don't want to get rid of it completely, because I know some of the more advanced students really liked it. So I will offer that module up as an advanced optional module for people who are moving through the material more swiftly. And I really encourage them, if you want to be an expert, go on and do this advanced optional module. So it allows students to kind of customize the course to a certain extent for their own needs. It can be a little more remedial focus, or it can be more advanced focus, depending on their own particular desires for the course and the pace at which they are moving through it. And then I have to say, over the 6 years that I've been doing the course, the exam grades have gone up overall. And I think it's because I've been able to kind of bring up the bottom of the class by building these remedial optional tutorials into the course. So I think in terms of overall, student learning, the flexibility allowed within the course increases student learning overall. Another change I've noticed is in terms of student pacing. So I allow, based on some best practices that I read, I allow students to the option of working 1 week ahead. So if they have a job interview, if they have a conference, if they have their best friend's wedding, something coming up, it gives them the flexibility to kind of plan for that and work faster if they need to. one of my favorite stories is because of this flexibility inherent in the course, I had a student give birth towards the end of the semester, and she successfully completed the course and got an A because she was just able to work. She knew what pace she needed to finish by based on her due date, and she and I worked out a schedule, and I made things available to her faster, and she was able to complete the course kind of on an accelerated basis. And everything went great with the grade and with the baby. So it was you couldn't do that necessarily in a face-to-face course. So that was really neat to be able to support that. In terms of efficiencies, one great example of kind of personal efficiencies that the online format allows that I've taken advantage of is with office hours. So I use our Adobe Connect software to hold my office hours from home because I noticed that, oftentimes most people don't come by office hours, and so and the other thing I noticed was a lot of students were doing their work on weekends, and so I wanted to be available at a time when a chunk of people were actually doing these workbook exercises and questions would arise. And through Adobe Connect, I was able to do this from home in my kitchen, and I would usually schedule it for the time when I'm making the casserole for next week's lunch. And if somebody buzzes in on the conferencing software, I can simply turn off the oven and focus my attention on the computer. But on the other hand, if no one shows up, I get my casserole cooked, and it's a productive afternoon either way. But I've had some real fun with students on the Adobe Connect. I can think of instances where, I've had 3 or 4 students in there, and I will say give them extra practice exercises. I'll type it in to the screen, and they'll kind of talk amongst themselves about what the best potential answer would be, and then I check back in a few minutes and give them feedback. So I've used Adobe Connect quite a bit to kind of give people extra practice exercises, look at their answers, and be able to correct them immediately on what's wrong within their answer. And students really do seem to appreciate it. Or other times they'll just drop in and ask for a clarification on a due date or those sorts of things. But it's been very convenient for me in terms of personal time efficiency and remaining very accessible to students. My online teaching has actually influenced my face-to-face teaching in big ways, which I did not expect when I started this. But with online teaching, online teaching got me to think a lot more about activities that the students do and turn in to demonstrate to me that they've mastered something. And thinking about a course in terms of small student products that I can evaluate over the course of the semester has actually led me to do much more of that in my face-to-face classes. So I think in part through online learning, I've become much less lecture-oriented in the face-to-face classroom and much more active learning-oriented, so getting students to actually do things in class. So sort of adopting the Greg Moses approach of if there's a lecture. In fact, I think if I taught my online class face-to-face, I know I would adopt the Greg Moses approach of having them do the lecture before class, listen to my lecture before class, and then just doing exercises within class. So it's definitely gotten me thinking and much more interested in active learning in the face-to-face classroom. So in terms of advice about remaining sane personally while teaching online, I think it's really important to talk to people, a lot of people who have taught online. It's a mistake to go into it without doing so because you will make a lot of rookie mistakes, and those mistakes will stress you out. They will add stress to your life, and there's tricks that lots of people have developed lots of tricks that will aid you in avoiding those. So talking to people about those tricks or practices or rules of thumb are really important. So just start talking to people about it. And then I think another thing to keep in mind is that there's different styles of online classes. So one rough cut might be classes like that are more workbook oriented or project oriented, where students are producing things, they're turning those things in, you're grading them, and classes that are discussion oriented, where it's actually in discussion that you want to see demonstration of, application of concepts and critical thinking. There's very different lessons learned from both of those. So there's lots of tricks about how to manage a student discussion online without going insane, and there's lots of tricks about doing more project or types of things. So figure out what your class is going to be. Is it going to be the one or the other, kind of a mix, and then find out places to get best practices about doing that. One of the most important things that I picked up from someone else in my department who had taught online was the idea of having days off. So one of the burdens of teaching online is that the students are always there. And in a face-to-face class, they're still always there to some extent because they can email you. But, the boundaries, the spatio-temporal boundaries of the class diminish that to some effect. Students tend to come to class or section and ask things. But in an online world, they can't. So they could be sending you questions at any point in time. And so I think it's important to build in some relief from that. And so someone had suggested to me of stating days off. And I did that. I figured out, I run my course Wednesday to Wednesday, so assignment becomes available 9 a.m. Wednesday morning. It's due by 9 a.m. the next Wednesday morning. Based on some experience with the first couple times I taught it, I realized that most students don't start until Saturday, so they tend not to do anything the first 2 days anyway. So that became an obvious place to have 2 days off. So I just write into my syllabus that class starts Wednesday, but I reserve the right not to answer their emails on Thursday and Friday because those are my research days. I focus on research. Now, of course, if someone emails me with an emergency, I would respond. But if I reserve the right not to, and it provides some mental relief that I think is really important. Other people state, I don't check my email. I check my email between, 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. So it essentially creates expectations, a clear expectation in the student's mind about when you're available and how often you might respond to the email and how fast they can expect a response. And stating those expectations clearly both gives the instructor relief and some freedom, but also I think increases student satisfaction because they have a good understanding, and a realistic expectation of your availability. So that was, I think, the most important thing that someone told me. It helped tremendously. So how did our department as a whole get interested? How did we get buy-in for our online program? There is no simple answer to that question. Different faculty were motivated by different things. So there was a certain subset of our faculty that was very motivated by the idea that we ought to be teaching more of the librarians in the state of Wisconsin. There's a certain percent out there that aren't coming to us for their degree. They're going to some other program because they have an online program and they live, way out in the boondocks. They can't afford to take 2 years off and come to Madison for a professional degree. So it was kind of a Wisconsin idea thing that we can serve the state better, particularly as a professional program aimed at adults. We can serve the state better by having an online program. So certain people were very, very motivated by that. Also, along the same lines that some people were motivated by the idea that we could get more women in our program by having it online because they felt that statistically the burden of child care and aging parent care is more likely to fall upon women. So again, these women might be less available to travel to Madison to take courses, but given an online program, our materials, our degree would be more accessible to that subset of people who, have children, have aging parents, have full-time jobs, and can't afford to take off. So it made it more accessible to a broader population. Other people were not motivated by that at all. Other people were very concerned, about the workload. There were concerns about student quality. Would the students we admitted in the online program be not as strong as students as our face-to-face program? So we had to create very clear kind of internal department rules about our admissions process and how the same admission standards would apply to online students as face-to-face students, that there would not be a separate admissions committee for the online program, so that everyone would be judged together. That was key to kind of getting buy-in from some people. And then, frankly, money talks, and for some people, seeing the cash on the table or the potential cash on the table was a big motivator. That our department administrator created some budget forecasts based on if we admitted this many online students, how much program revenue could we expect to bring in, and that was a convincing argument for other people. So what worked really varied by person within the department.